Hey butter babes and butter boys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that's a little controversial. And that is why I think fasting for women is a no-no. Before we get into all of these things, you need to know that fasting is not bad all the time. Just sometimes. Today we're going to be talking about fasting, and we're going to be talking about women's health and menstrual cycles and how to utilize our strengths as women. Let's get into it. Women should not fast during a period, and I will explain why. Fasting is something that has been hype around the last few years. And actually, most of the studies done on fasting, just like most of the studies in general, are not done on women. I have done my own studies when it comes to fasting, utilizing not only my own body, but hearing all of the things that people talk about when it comes to hormones and health and the differences biologically that us women and men have. As you guys may know, a man works on a 24-hour cycle, meaning that during the day, his hormones start off with real high testosterone, and throughout the day, he crashes a bit and peaks a bit. Different types of hormonal changes that happen through a 24-hour cycle, which, as you guys know, is an entire day. As for women, our bodies do not work that way. And I not only have opinions around this subject when it comes to fasting, but I also have opinions in regards to working out, being creative, our stress levels, working actual jobs. And in this video, we are going to be talking all about that today. So I'm going to timestamp the video for you guys so that we know exactly what it is that we are talking about, and you guys can either skip through that particular section or hear the entire thing if you guys want to learn more about your own body as women. As for men who are watching my video, this could actually benefit you from learning more about women and the women in your life and potentially your future wife. Or your wife if you already have one. A woman's cycle usually varies from 28 days to 31 days. But this also all depends on if you are regular or irregular, and these things can switch and change over time, depending on your routine, your diet, your stress levels, and a bunch of different types of environmental factors. That even includes if you have recently traveled. Things like boats and planes and things can actually affect our body because we are not designed to be doing those things in the first place. But of course, we gotta adapt with the time, so we figure things out as we go, and we just gotta figure out what to do in these situations. What do you do when you have to travel and you know that your period might be a little bit late? What to do to prevent certain things? How to utilize your energy at its best during the times of the month. Now let's learn exactly what happens during the cycle. We have our follicular phase, our ovulation phase, our luteal phase, and as you know, our menstruation phase. Now, what happens to the body during these changes? Because actually a lot of us do not know, and it is very important for us to know in order to navigate what changes we are to make from here on forward. The follicle stimulating hormone spikes leading to egg growth. The follicles in the ovary start to develop and to mature. So this is the body's way of preparing for a child that is yet to come. During this time, you have different feelings, but we're going to get to that in a bit. During your ovulation phase, which is around day 14, your luteinizing hormone surges, triggering ovulation. And this is usually the time women feel the best. But we'll get to that. So it releases a mature egg from the ovary. From day 15 to 24, you have your luteal phase. And this is actually around the time that a lot of women want to eat more and want to binge eat more. So you guys gotta be aware of this. Your progesterone levels rises, thickening the uterine lining. The uterus then prepares for pregnancy. Now, if there is no baby during this point, it is when women start to feel a little bit more fatigued and they have pain and sore, tender breasts and all of these things. Then, day 24 to 28 is when your menstrual cycle arises. Hormone levels drop, triggering shedding of the uterine lining. As the uterine lining is shedding, vaginal bleeding happens, aka your period. And this is during the time you feel tired and all of this stuff, and you have cramps, and you don't feel at your best. Now that we know the basics of this information, let's talk about the moods and hormones that all of these phases bring up to the surface. During your follicular phase, your brain is more sharp. You are more energetic, you are more sociable, and estrogen rises. So women also tend to experience clear skin, increased sex drive, higher pain tolerance. Actually, it's a great time to get tattooed. And improved moods. It is also very goal-oriented, so you're very sharp and on your feet. Now you move out of this phase and you go into your ovulation phase, where you actually have an array of different feelings and emotions. You could have mood swings, you can have a little bit more anxiety and depression and emotional sensitivity, but you also have an increase in confidence. You're still pretty horny. You can have a positive mood, but as you can see, there are pros and cons to this stage. And this isn't for everybody, but depending on how many hours you sleep, depending on what you eat, depending on your exercise levels, all of these things tend to affect your body. And actually, we are not supposed to have cramps. So when we have all of these things start to come up, like irregular menstrual cycles and hormonal changes and our boobs hurting and all of these things, it means that there is something within our life, either our stress, our mental state, or something that we're consuming that is not putting us in favor of things. Now, as we know, the carnivore diet is great for regulating all of these things. And primarily the reason being is that during this time in the cycle, you actually tend to have kind of a deficiency in minerals, such as iron, magnesium, and vitamin B, which are all types of vitamins that are strongly found in red meat. Your lifestyle changes, whether you just started carnivore or you're trying something new, if you've recently traveled, if you have had a sudden loss, or if you have work struggles or relationship issues or whatever it is, all of these things can actually affect the way your body is going to undergo these changes, whether it's going to be smooth sailing or a little bit rocky. Stress is another one of those things that will affect how your menstrual cycle works. During this time, your estrogen increases, your FSH is also increased, you have a surge in LH, and your progesterone begins to decrease. As the LH surge happens, your estrogen levels slowly begin to decrease, and your progesterone levels increase. And this leads to your luteal phase. So, by society's standards, our luteal phase is actually supposed to be just basically kind of a time of hell because our mood swings are everywhere. We have more anxiety and depression, irritability, tension. We feel like we want to cry. We watch dumb movies and we cry at those. And we cry some more, and we want to withdraw from social events. During this time is when you start to have bloating and acne, your appetite changes, you have tender breasts or insomnia, your sexual interest might change during this time, and you actually may have difficulty concentrating. So as you can see, not so great. During this phase, you have increased levels of progesterone and estrogen. As progesterone takes over, eventually drops of estrogen start to come in. And now, lastly, we have our menstrual phase. During our menstrual phase, we have nothing but also an array of emotions. Isn't it so fun being a woman sometimes? So we have not only our mood swings, as we know, the depression, the anxiety is there, irritability is there. So you don't want to irritate your woman, guys. And I'm also talking to the ladies. Now, we also have low self-esteem. So this is usually the time where you don't want to make that comment because it might affect her more than you realize. Women following a normal standard diet during this time want to binge eat, and they want to have all the junk foods, and they want to have chocolate. And the reason why they want to have chocolate is because chocolate is high in magnesium, and that is what your body's actually craving, not the chocolate itself. So we all have things that our body is telling us, but we don't know, because by societal standards, by the way we were raised in these environments, we are no longer in tune with our bodies and receptive to the things that we want or need. And these things could be sleep, these things could be minerals, these things could be certain types of food changes, these things could be so many, and the list goes on and on. During your menstruation, a lot of levels tend to drop, and that is where the body undergoes all of these wonderful feelings. So our estrogen and progesterone down the drain. All these fluctuation in hormones, of course, lead to us feeling a certain way. Right after all of that is done, which usually lasts a couple of days to a week, depending on how lucky you are, then you repeat everything all over again. As I mentioned, isn't it so fun being a woman? For men, on the other hand, they have this 24-hour cycle. We have all of these wonderful changes that happen to our bodies. And because us women are biologically different in this way, we need to do things that are different than what men do. And a lot of the research and the things out there are showing us that fasting is amazing for you, that eating fruits is amazing for you, that cutting out certain things like red meat or dairy could actually be beneficial for a period. Yeah, I don't see that happening. Now that we know everything in regards to the menstrual cycles and what happens and which hormones take place, now let's learn how to utilize all of this wonderful information that we just learned to figure out what is in our best strengths at which period, no pun intended, that we should use all of these things. Let's get into it. So if I were you guys, I would take this time to do strength training, to do functional training, to do martial arts, to do ice baths. As we all know, doing ice baths put strain on our nervous system, and it is a good type of push. Your body then, with all of those receptors going off, start to heal things, calm your nervous system, calms your heart, and helps you stay present in the moment. So not only is it great for the body and to reduce inflammation and to help with mental health, but it also helps you spiritually stay present. During ovulation, I would take to yoga, I would take to Pilates, I would take to functional training. I would also take to martial arts, dancing, and all of that stuff. Take on that new dance class that you always wanted to do, and get your husband to join you too. During the luteal phase, your body is undergoing all of those changes. Your body is already under a little bit of stress, so you don't want to add added stress to it. So I would say that if you do want to do the ice baths, if you guys do like cold exposure therapy, the best thing to do in that situation would be to do hot and cold therapy. That way you have best of both worlds, but you also have a little bit of the heat to help with the uterus, which we actually need added heat in this lower region, as well as heat on our feet, and circulation helps everything flow down there properly as it should. Now, during your menstrual cycle, if you do want to take this 1 week or 3 days or however long your period is to take a rest, then listen to your body. This is the time that you should be resting. This is the time where you should listen to your body and realize that there are times to go and there are times to rest, and that's equally as important for healing, for our body, for proper functioning. That way, as soon as you hit your follicular phase again, you're good to go, you're ready, you're active, and all of that, you're feeling sexy, and you can take on a new dance class with heels or a twerk class or whatever it is. I think that during this time, it is also amazing to do light stretching, to do yoga, to do restorative yoga, to do slow movements, to do chair yoga, to be doing things that allow you a little bit more of a yin flow instead of a yang flow. You want to put yourself in slow and rounded situations. We're going to be making different videos about the masculine and the feminine, how you could utilize those things spiritually and both in your health in another upcoming video. Just to give you guys a quick little summarization about the yin and the yang, or what I like to call circle and X's. I learned this kind of theory from a friend of mine that taught hip-hop dance classes. And basically he said that there are X movements, which are all of your rigid movements. And body-wise, they say that it's the lines, it's the rigidity, which is also the masculine, the more logical, the more analytical. And then there are the O's, which are more creative, more motion, and more yin, more divine feminine, if you will. So utilizing all of these in regards to your brain, your body, your health, you can figure out which things bring a little bit more yin energy and which things bring a little bit more yang energy. If you guys are interested in knowing a little bit about how to utilize your yin and your yang, let me know below, and I'll make a video just for you guys. But one thing I wanted to add before we wrap up the body and exercise section of this video is that I think that it's always important to be moving just a bit. That's why I suggest to do light yoga and light stretches and restorative movements during your time of the month, because our body needs a little bit of movement to keep everything flowing and going. Now let's talk about foods and talk about fasting, which I know a lot of you guys are on this particular video in order to learn a little bit more about these things. As you guys know, fasting has been a huge movement for the past few years. And this is not something that is new. This dates back to the beginning of times where we would fast until we would find foods available. But as we know, we always had hunter-gatherer mentality, which is a really big debate in the carnivore community. We're omnivores. We eat plants and we eat meat. We are gatherers and hunters, not hunters and gatherers. Let's not even go there, okay? We know that we have so many things available to us in the supermarket. Let's say an example, let's say nowadays, presently in modern time, we have everything in the supermarket that we could possibly want and need, okay? Well, actually, there's always gonna be that one person in the comments. Well, actually. Anyways, we have so many things. We have so many fruits. We have so many meat, vegetables, and everything in abundance that we didn't used to have back in the day. If we wanted to, we could actually overeat. If we wanted to, we could binge. That is why most of North America has an obesity problem too. Because we get bored, we eat. The main issue with this society when it comes to health and food is that we see food as pleasure and not for health. That is the biggest concern there is out there. While I do think that buying organic and pasture-raised and grass-fed everything is great, if you have that option, that's amazing for you. And if you don't, just buying meat as is would actually be beneficial to your health way more than it would be to eat carbs and other things like that. While I do think that carbs are not the complete enemy, I do think that there are ways that we can consume a little bit of carb without it being the main source in our diet. For example, let's talk about fruits. I personally see fruits as something that would be amazing for women, but not amazing for men. So biologically speaking, there is something that is actually better for women than there are for men. Just like I say, fasting is better for men always. But fasting is not always good for women all the time. Shocker, I know. I know a lot of women are gonna come for me when I say these certain things. But like, what can I say? You know, we get mad when we've been doing something for so long and realize that it's wrong, or we know it's right and we don't want to give up that thing, so we defend our vices. Sorry, not sorry. What can I say? So as we know, there are certain times in the month where our estrogen is low. And sometimes that can cause a little bit of discomfort in our body. So I find that during those times are the time that you could utilize a little bit of berries, which are low carb fruits, but high in estrogen. And you can utilize those to actually help offset, 1, cravings, 2, all of those awful symptoms, and 3, to actually satisfy a little bit of that sweet tooth and kind of also get all of those antioxidants and things that we need. So reduce a little bit of that inflammation. Full-on carnivore is absolutely amazing. I did it for basically a year before I started incorporating other tiny little things. And still to this day, I am 95% carnivore, but I do sometimes include things like fermented food, the occasional kombucha, berries, and avocados, sometimes even tapioca, but that one is rare. Honey, you know, it's a Brazilian thing. And maple syrup, it's a Canadian thing. So knowing these things and knowing what works best for our body, we can actually use these things to our strengths. When it comes to fasting, you do not want to fast on your period and before your period. Your body is undergoing so much stress, as you guys already know. You guys already have all of the information that I've given you in regards to what happens to your hormones, what happens to your mood, and all of that stuff. Can you imagine what is going on within your nervous system and your mental state? To be adding that extra stress on top of your body is not beneficial, and it's not gonna help your womb. It's not gonna help your feminine. It's not gonna help anything in regards to that situation. I would suggest doing on and off fasting. If you're trying to lose weight, there are other ways that you can do that without stressing your body and your hormones, which is also the most important thing in order to lose weight in the first place. As soon as you balance out everything else, you will end up losing weight. But we're going to make a video on weight loss in another video. While I personally don't need to lose weight, I know the ways to lose weight because 1, I have dealt with obesity in my family. I have dealt with obesity with my exes, and I know exactly what to do in these scenarios to actually help fix those things. So as we know, eating high fat, fatty meat, fat is the best thing. So during your period, I think that it should be a food cycling system. Usually the 2 weeks after your period, it is normal to actually not eat as much. And I find that it's also easier to fast then because you have all these hours. Maybe you have coffee or maybe you don't, but you can just be drinking your water throughout the day, and you do OMAD, 1 meal a day, do all of that stuff. And then you have your pound of food, pound of meat a day, and you feel fabulous and energetic, and you got all of your insulin goals, your weight loss goals, your health goals, and you just feel on top of your game. Now, the problem is a lot of people aren't even aware of the information I shared in the first half of the video, and they just do things whenever and do things consistently as a routine, but we are not like men. And this is a thing that unfortunately society has not taught us. There are so many things that we learn out there that are actual misinformation, and women follow it because they think that it's the trend or they think it's the healthy thing to do, but they don't take women's bodies into consideration at all. And this information that I'm sharing with you guys, I think is kind of just catching up right now in some of the carnivore community, and I know a lot of health experts know about this, but they don't actually talk about this much. And I was actually one of the first women in carnivore to actually talk about fasting and hormones together, because I do find that it's not appropriate to be fasting 24/7. And I know it looks like I'm a mother scolding you, but you know, I always want what's best for you, even if I don't know you. You're like my sister or brother. Who knows who's watching this right now? Another tip that I like, I have 2 tips before we move on to the next section, because now that we know why it is important to fast and why not to fast and all this stuff, and we're talking about the food portions section, we're going to be talking about supplementation, all the stuff. I have a friend who says that you don't have to supplement, as we know, but he says that he still does supplement just for insurance purposes, which I found to be hilarious and clever. Sometimes it's good to just have the extra additive stuff just so that you're not low and deficient in any areas. Maybe you eat a certain type of food or whatever it is, and your body might take a little bit longer to adapt to it. But I think that beef liver and beef has all of the nutrients you may need. I think that sometimes, even though a lot of carnivores disagree with having honey, and they disagree with kind of like the electrolytes, and some say you don't need salt, I think that it is sometimes beneficial to have those things. And there are ways to utilize it without overdoing it, just like everything else we do in life. We're going to be making a whole separate video on honey in the first place, but let's talk about it from a health standpoint. Sometimes if you get sick, it could be actually amazing because it is antimicrobial, antibacterial. It helps with wounds, it helps with the throat. As we know, as a singer and as an artist myself, I like to consume honey because it helps me when I have the scratchy throat. It helps with environmental stressors, and it actually can help with fighting allergies in the summertime, especially if you have local honey. And these are the tricks. You want to get your honey from a good source if you're going to be consuming it frequently. Now, as for salt and electrolytes, think of our ancestors. What were they doing most of the time? Do you think that they had electrolyte supplements? They probably did not. But they did have natural electrolytes in their springs and water due to the minerals that there were within the rivers or wherever they were getting their water from at the time. So no, we don't need added electrolytes in our water, but if you are consuming things like distilled water, like ozone water and all of these things, some of these do not have added minerals in them. So the water is literally still with no good or bad. And sometimes as we know, our body needs both good and bad bacteria, just like our body needs a little bit of electrolytes and things and some sorts of vitamins and minerals from added places that our body is not necessarily that it needs but thrives on. And that's the thing, that's the key thing, is that sometimes when you're feeling low energy and everything, it's good to have a little bit of a pinch of salt underneath your tongue, chug with some water. That's already an electrolyte. So to me personally, it really depends on your needs. But I say if you struggle with sleep, if you struggle with insomnia, if you struggle with cramping, try to get an electrolyte dropper that has more magnesium in it. If you're struggling with your bowels, if you're struggling with fatigue, I'd say that you should get some with a little bit more potassium in it. So it really depends on what you need, but it's essential to have all these things. And while beef has those things, sometimes it's good to add a little bit more. In case you guys are wondering, there are companies out there that actually have great electrolytes, natural, no sugar, all of that stuff. So if you guys are interested, the link will be below. And now, last tip in regards to these things is something that a lot of people neglect, but is actually absolutely amazing for people and for women and for teenagers, for the whole world, all ages, doesn't matter what age you are. And it is iodine. So we used to have a lot of natural sources of iodine available in our environmental factors, and nowadays it's actually really hard to find. And while we have a little bit of iodine in beef and things like that, it is great to actually add a little bit of a boost when it comes to that, because iodine helps our adrenals It can help the reproductive system. It can help the endocrine system, and the endocrine system helps with the functions of all the other things in regards to those stuff as well. So this can actually be beneficial as well for your mind, as well as it is for your body and all of your organs and everything else that needs a little bit of TLC. Now we're going to be talking about how to use your strengths within this society, because some of us gotta work, but learn exactly when it is time for us to be full on work, hustle, and rest. As we know that we have those periods, again, no pun intended. But there are certain things that our brain likes to focus on more depending on the time of month. There is an article in Neuroscience News that actually explains a lot about what happens in the brain during our cycle. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of a section that I have found within this information that I would like to share with you guys. In general, the female brain is still massively understudied in cognitive neuroscience. Even though sex steroid hormones are powerful modulators of learning and memory, less than 0.5 of the neuroimaging literature considers hormonal transition phases such as menstrual cycle, the influence of hormonal contraceptives, pregnancy, and menopause. As I was saying, understudied. But an interesting thing is that the luteal phase is actually an amazing stage to getting things done. You actually complete way more tasks when you're in this stage, and you actually feel more accomplished with doing so. It's almost like a reward system for our bodies and our minds during this stage. You would think that it would be during follicular phase or ovulation phase, but actually, luteal, the more you know. Your ovulation stage and your follicular stage is great to focus on creative tasks. It's also the time where you feel your sexiest. So you get to these stages where not only do you feel sexiest, but you actually look sexier to other people. Want to know something funny? Every time I'm ovulating, I know I'm ovulating based on the looks I get outside from men. It's just something pheromonal that happens, and they end up looking at me more, and I get way more attention during that time, which I always found interesting. And there was a study where they put a bunch of women at different stages of their menstrual cycle, and they found that the men ranked the attractiveness as the ovulation being the highest attraction for them physically during those stages than any of the other ones. Quite interesting, if you ask me. Unfortunately, I think your actual menstrual phase is not the best when it comes to societal work and standards and all that stuff. We women are not made to be working 24/7 and hustling and, being the breadwinners. That is supposed to be for man. Not saying that women shouldn't work. I think that we should have our own passions, hobbies, and it's good to have our own money. But I think that there should be phases of rest for women. And there are some places around the world where they give gap days for your menstruation, which I think that North America should, get on it when it comes to those stuff. But one thing that I find absolutely amazing and interesting of when it comes to menstrual cycles is that the more in tune you get with your body, the more in tune you are spiritually. Us women have really strong inner intuition. That's why they say women's intuition. It is not a thing, and it is not a made-up thing. Women are just naturally more receptive and empathetic and caring towards others. We are the mothers. We are the nurturers. When we learn to use these abilities to our advantage without being distracted by societal standards and by what we're supposed to be focusing on and fake feminism. I know I'm gonna get hate for that one. But we can actually be in tune with what our body needs. That I have learned what is right for me during these times, because sometimes I have moments where I know that I may be doing the wrong thing, whether it is career-wise or relationship-wise, and my gut and the feeling, the intuition right in the pit of the chest, right where the sternum sits, I know what I should be doing instinctually, And I think that that intuition is extremely strong and usually 99% right during our periods. And it is a skill that us women have that men do not have. Fun fact, did you know that most of CFOs are actually women, and they prefer to hire women? And the reason that they prefer to hire women in regard to these things is that women are actually able to sense more scams and any fraudulences and all of that stuff based on their women intuition. So there are things that can serve us even in the workplace. These are some things that have literally been studied on, that they find that men naturally observe less of. We are great at reading faces. We're amazing when it comes to these things. So while your menstruation, while your menstrual cycle sometimes sucks, while others love it, now you have some extra added knowledge as to the spiritual side of your cycle. The more you know. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that that video was informative. I know that I tried to cover as much as I could possible in regards to women's and their cycles and fasting and food and all of that stuff. If you guys want me to cover any more on a particular subject, maybe you guys want me to go even more deep into the fasting thing, or you guys want to learn a little bit more about why fruits are good, or why I think honey is good, or exercising tips and all of that stuff, please don't hesitate to comment down below and let me know which of this segment you found the most interesting and that you guys want to hear more of. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay happy, healthy, and horny. Dirty Carnivora, out.